So I want to bring a guy who, interesting guy. Rob Smith is his name. He's got a book, Always a Soldier, Service Sacrifice, coming out as America's favorite black gay Republican. I didn't know, Mr. Smith, that you were America's favorite, but I'll take your word for it. I read your book last night, and there are a number of things that I find interesting. Number one, I just want to tell everybody that at 17 years old, Mr. Smith enlisted in the Army. He had a tough time in basic, but stuck it out. He saw combat in Iraq. All right, spent 4 years in the Army, came out, went to college. Army paid for it. Now, you, according to your book, and you correct me if I've got it wrong, but I did read it. I'm one of the few interviewers that, because most of them are lazy, you know that, but I read it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You had a childhood that had very little parental support. You raised in Akron, Ohio, pretty much on your own at a very early age, confused kid, all right? And that story is common in African American precincts. Your upbringing was what millions of other African American kids have. Isn't that the root of a lot of the social problems in America?
Bill, it really is. The reason why I talk so much in the book about the fact that I didn't have a father growing up in the home, really. My father wasn't around when I was a teenager. The fact that I went to failing public schools in Akron, Ohio. The reason I talk about a lot of this stuff, and particularly why I came around to becoming a Republican and being in the conservative movement, is because there are so many African Americans who really do have that experience. And I want people to know that there is a different path. There is a different way to go than to just saying, I hate America. Racism is the problem. White people are the problem. All of that other crap that we hear from the left all the time. And a lot of the stuff that we'll be hearing every night this week from the DNC. So that is why I felt that it was so important to include that stuff in the book.
If you were a speaker at the DNC convention this week and said just what you said, you'd be booed. A lot of African Americans would not, even though you went through it, would not listen to you. Why is that?
Well, they wouldn't listen to me because the African American community has been so used by the left in the way that you cannot talk about these issues like fatherlessness. You cannot talk about these issues like culture. You cannot talk about these issues like the fact that the vast majority of African Americans are killed by other African Americans. We have a body count every weekend in Chicago that makes everything else, including these African American men that have been shot by police officers, it dwarfs that. You know what I mean? So you can't talk about these things because you are told that you're not supposed to say that in spaces where white people can hear. Because if white people can hear it, then all of a sudden, we're talking out of school. This is the kitchen table talk. And, Bill, I get into the book later on when I talk about the more political stuff. And I talk about how the Democrats and the left use African-American entertainers, rappers, athletes, ball players to push this idea that African Americans are so oppressed in this country, but yet you have multimillionaires that are living the American dream, pushing this idea that Black people are oppressed in America. It just doesn't make sense. And I would be booed if I said these things because it goes against the narrative.
Bill O'Reilly is back on TV and only on The First. No Spin News, every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on The First.